Hi everybody and welcome to Weston Drinks. My name is Weston and this is a video about respect. Alright. Today we're going to talk about your first root recipe, the old-fashioned. Whenever I teach about the root recipes, I always start with the old-fashioned, because each root recipe is defined by 3 key elements, and the old-fashioned only has 3 ingredients. The root recipes are the 6 most important recipes you can learn, because they're the foundation for every other recipe ever written. The first element of your old-fashioned is the core. In a classic old-fashioned, this would be bourbon. But the original definition of a cocktail actually calls for spirits of any kind. So you can make a rum old-fashioned, a tequila old-fashioned, a brandy old-fashioned. I've had good gin or vodka old-fashions. Maybe not vodka. Now, making an old-fashioned is really all about respecting your core spirit. The other 2 ingredients are just there to heighten its best characteristics. So, to heighten the best characteristics of your spirit, you have to know what they are. The best way to do that is to taste it. So, it's really important to know how to properly taste spirits. So, there are a few important things before you even get started on tasting your spirits. First, you want to start with a clean palate. That means at least 2 hours before your tasting, no coffee, no mint toothpaste, spit out your gum. You want to start with a neutral palate so you can pick up all those nice flavors. The next important thing is to stay hydrated. This is good advice for life in general, but it's especially important when you're tasting. Making sure you're hydrated will help keep your sinuses clear and help your tongue do its job. So, drink plenty of water before, during, and after tasting. The third thing is to use the right glass. A regular old wine glass will do just fine. The wide base will allow aromas to vaporize, and the narrow top will direct those towards your little nose holes. When you're tasting spirits, the first thing you want to do is smell them. But an important thing to keep in mind here is to keep your distance. I see a lot of people do a wine sniff. Don't do that. Alcohol has a much higher concentration of ethanol than beer or wine. So much so that if you get too close too fast, it'll actually numb the olfactory receptors in your nose, making it much harder to pick up all those nice, tasty smells. So, to do this right, you want to start at about chest level. Gently waft the glass in front of your face, and smell with both your nose and your mouth. This will help give you a nice even coating across your entire palate and get you that really nice nuanced smell. The next thing to keep in mind is to take it slow. Take little sips. Alcohol is poison, and our tongues know that. So their first reaction will be, "Oh my god, what's going on?" So for the first taste, take a sip and forget it immediately. Your tongue is going to freak out and doesn't know what's going on. So, take a pause, take a breath, and then take a second sip. For the second sip, take a small taste and let it coat your entire tongue. This will allow you to get all the different flavor profiles present in that spirit. Really think about how it evolves across your palate, from the tip of your tongue to the middle, all the way to the back, and even how it tastes as you breathe out after drinking it. And when you're tasting, trust your instincts. Everyone's palate is different and everyone is going to identify different flavor compounds. If you taste cherries, I can almost guarantee you those flavor compounds are in that spirit somewhere. There are no wrong answers. If you can, try to taste with a partner, or 4. Because everyone's palate is different, having those extra opinions might help you identify flavors that you never would have on your own. Our brains are really just inefficient computers. When you take a taste, they're going to pick up thousands and thousands and thousands of different flavor particles. At best, they'll probably identify 3 or 4. Everything else goes into dry storage. But our brains are also very open to suggestion. So when someone else says, "Ooh, vanilla," your brain goes, "Oh, that's what that was," pulls it out of dry storage, connects a name to it, and suddenly, all you can taste is vanilla. On that note, form your own opinion. Don't always talk about what you taste immediately. Smell, take notes, taste, take notes, and then talk about what you taste. If you're alone, you can actually look up tasting notes on many different spirits online. Just form your own opinion before you rely on someone else's. Your palate is wonderful and unique, And if you discuss what you're supposed to taste before you actually taste it, you'll be predisposed to identify those flavors instead of what you might have picked up on your own. And then everyone misses out on the wonderful, unique things that they might have tasted if they had just kept their mouths shut. The last thing about tasting is to practice. This is the best homework ever. The more you do this and consciously think about what you're tasting, the better you'll get at it, and the more flavors you'll be able to identify. And don't just taste spirits, taste everything. Try new food, try new wine, smell the flowers. Train your palate to identify all kinds of flavors, not just the ones that you're familiar with and comfortable with. And try everything twice. There's tons of evidence that suggests that our mental state plays a huge role in how we taste things. So if you had one bad night with rum 20 years ago, it might be time to give it another chance. Whether it's something new or something familiar, approach it with an open mind and you'll be surprised at what you taste. So now that we've picked our core spirit and identified what flavors we like about it, the next part is the balance. For a classic old fashioned, the balance is just plain old sugar. Now, it would technically be more traditional to use a sugar cube that you break up with the bitters, but I really hate that. First off, some sugar cubes are more dense than others. So you never know exactly how much sugar you're going to be getting in your final cocktail. Secondly, because you're stirring this into a cold liquid, it's almost impossible to get all of that sugar to dissolve, which means you're going to have a lot of gritty crap at the bottom of your drink, and no one likes to chew on a cocktail. Instead, I prefer to use a rich simple syrup made of 2 parts cane sugar to 1 part water. Cane sugar is less refined than white sugar. Ooh! Which means it has a higher natural molasses content, which gives it a richer flavor, which complements the bourbon better. I also prefer cane sugar to brown sugar, which is just white sugar with molasses added to it after the fact. Brown sugar has too much molasses, which can overpower the flavor of your bourbon. And try different sweeteners. Different types of sugar might complement your core spirit better than a cane sugar does. And last we have the seasoning. For a classic old-fashioned, this is 3 to 4 dashes of bitters. For a bourbon old-fashioned, Angostura is kind of the golden standard, but if you're using a rye or a rye-heavy bourbon, I really like adding a few dashes of Peychaud's bitters as well. But what the hell are bitters anyway? I get this question a lot. Bitters were originally marketed as medicine. They're basically a bunch of herbs and spices infused into high-proof alcohol. Most of these herbs have a bitter quality to them. And since most cocktails hang out in the sweet and sour territory, a little dash of bitter will add a lot of dimension to your cocktail and make it more interesting. To taste bitters, take it in 2 steps. First, dash a few drops on the back of your hand and taste it like that. Wash your hands first. I shouldn't have to say this after 2020, but don't put your dirty fingers in your mouth, for all our sakes. Just make sure you're using an unscented soap so you don't pick up any of those flavors on the back of your hand as well. Just like you would when tasting a spirit, let it evolve across your palate and see what you identify. If you like those flavors, move on to step 2. Add 5 or 6 dashes to a small wine glass and add a splash of soda water to it. Those bubbles will help carry those aromatics out in a different way, helping you to explore the flavor more. So here's our basic old-fashioned build. Try to stick pretty close to this recipe. Too much sugar and your drink will be thin and sweet. Too many bitters and it'll be cloying and medicinal. Remember, a good old-fashioned is an exercise in restraint. Alright, so let's make our own version of the old-fashioned. But, first things first, get your apron on, wash your hands, and get your tools together. We'll start with 2 ounces of chamomile-infused brandy. To make a chamomile-infused brandy, add 2 bags of chamomile tea to a jar, top it off with brandy, close it up, and leave it overnight. Next, we'll do about 1/8 of an ounce of cinnamon-infused honey. To make a cinnamon-infused honey, add equal parts honey and water to a small saucepan. Add a few sticks of cinnamon, and simmer until it's reduced by about half. Top it off with ice, give it a stir, pour it into a small rocks glass, and garnish it with a lemon twist. And there you have it, our very own take on the old-fashioned. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you come up with a name for this week's old-fashioned variation, be sure to leave it in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for a new video every other Thursday. Cheers!